There is an old story from China, a story that has survived for centuries. Not because people believed every miracle inside it, but because they recognized something inside themselves. It begins, not with a king, not with an emperor, not with a god, but with a monkey born from stone, wild, fearless, restless. He crossed oceans, climbed impossible mountains, learned secrets hidden from ordinary eyes. The more he discovered, the more impossible he became. For a while, it seemed there was nothing life could place before him that it could not overcome. Until one day, he met the only opponent who never needed to fight back. Death, not as a battle, not as an enemy, simply as a certainty. For the first time, the monkey stood before something that refused to move aside. The old story says, Sun Wukong did something no living creature had ever dared to do. He entered the underworld, past silent halls, past forgotten souls, until he reached a single book. Inside was every life, every beginning, every ending, every name. He searched until he found his own. For a long moment, he simply stared. Then, he lifted the brush. One stroke. His name disappeared. The ending was gone, as though mortality itself could be erased with ink. Most people remember this moment because it feels like the greatest victory of the Monkey King. But what if this was not his greatest victory? What if it was the beginning of his deepest illusion? Stories endure because they refuse to stay inside the past. They keep waiting until someone recognizes themselves inside them. Most of us will never walk through the gates of the underworld. We will never hold the book of death in our hands. And yet, there are moments when we quietly wish life could stop changing. A goodbye that never arrives, a face that never grows older, a season that never ends, without noticing. We begin asking life to remain just a little longer, not forever, just a little longer. So before we ask why the monkey challenged death, there is another question waiting beneath the story. Why does the human heart find it so difficult to let anything come to an end? Because that question, not immortality, is where our journey begins. Sun Wukong was not the first to refuse death. Long before the Monkey King picked up the brush, human beings had already been asking the same impossible question. How can anything beautiful be made to last? Some raised monuments that reached toward the sky. Some carved their stories into stone. Some crossed deserts searching for hidden elixirs. Others believed their children, their kingdoms, or their names might continue what their bodies could not. Every civilization imagined immortality in its own language. But beneath every monument, every empire, every legend, the longing was the same. To hold what time keeps carrying away. Today, we rarely search for magical elixirs, yet our conversation with time has never ended. We restore old photographs, we preserve voices, we record birthdays, we celebrate anniversaries, we build homes meant to outlive us. We plant trees whose shade we may never sit beneath. These are not acts of vanity. They are acts of love, because something deep within us resists saying goodbye. Again and again, we make the same quiet bargain. Just a little longer. One more spring. One more conversation. One more evening with the people we love. The wish itself is deeply human. Not because we are weak, but because love always hopes for one more day. And yet, there has never been a civilization powerful enough to stop time. The greatest cities have become ruins. The loudest empires have fallen silent. Books disappear. Languages change. Even mountains, which seem eternal, are slowly shaped by wind, water, and centuries. Impermanence does not choose between kings and beggars. It visits every life with the same quiet certainty. This was the truth waiting for Sun Wukong, not inside the Book of Death, but inside life itself. No power, no wisdom, no miracle could negotiate with change. Because change is not the opposite of life. It is the rhythm through which life continues. The monkey had seen what no one wished to see, that every name would one day reach its final page. So he chose to fight the inevitable. He erased his own name. He believed he had defeated death. But another struggle had already begun, a quieter one, not between life and death, but between the self and the truth that nothing can be held forever. Sun Wukong had erased his name from the Book of Death, but what had he really protected? His life, or something else? From the moment we are born, a story begins to gather around us. A name, a face, a family, a language, memories, victories, failures, little by little. These fragments begin to feel like a single person. We defend that story. We polish it. We explain it. We compare it with the stories of everyone else. And after many years, we rarely notice that we have begun mistaking the story for the one who is living it. Perhaps this was the real moment the monkey encountered. Not death, but the fragile structure he called himself. The ego does not look like a monster. It looks like a house. Every experience adds another brick. Every compliment strengthens a wall. Every wound locks another door. Every success becomes another room where we hide our fear. Slowly, we begin living inside this house. We decorate it, protect it, repair it, expand it, until one day, we forget that we are the builder. We believe we are the house. That is why criticism feels like collapse. That is why rejection feels like exile. That is why being ignored feels strangely like disappearing. Not because life rejected us, but because the house we built began to crack. Imagine, many years from now, someone unlocks your front door, not as a guest, as the new owner. Your books remain on the shelf for a while. Then they are packed away. Photographs are taken down. Walls are painted. Messages are deleted. Your favorite chair belongs to someone else. One by one, the small traces that once whispered, "You are here," become silent. There is something deeply unsettling about that image, because the ego does not only want to live, it wants its place to remain untouched. It wants the room to remember, the name to remain, the story to continue. But rooms do not remember. Walls do not grieve. They simply welcome the next life that enters. This is why death can feel so frightening, not only because life ends, but because the one we have spent a lifetime constructing cannot imagine its own absence. The ego keeps asking the same impossible question: how can I continue? Life answers with a different one. What if continuing was never your task? Perhaps. Peace does not begin when we find a way to survive forever. Perhaps. It begins the moment we stop asking our story to become eternal. Sun Wukong had changed the Book of Death, but the mind inside him remained unchanged. The fear simply found another direction, another victory, another mountain, another proof, which reveals one of the strangest truths of the human heart. Removing fear does not always remove restlessness. Sometimes, The restless mind simply chooses a new destination. And that is exactly where the monkey's journey will lead next. After every road has been followed, after every victory has failed to bring the promised rest, another possibility begins to appear. What if change itself was never the source of our exhaustion? What if the exhaustion came from standing against it, from asking the departing not to leave, from asking the uncertain to become certain, from demanding that life repeat yesterday because yesterday felt safe? Resistance can feel like strength, but over time, it becomes a weight. The body tightens. The mind rehearses what has already happened. The heart keeps watch over doors that have already closed. Buddhist wisdom does not offer a way to make life permanent. It offers a different freedom, to see change without turning it into an enemy. Nothing will end. But nothing needs to remain unchanged in order to be whole. A river never returns to collect the water it once carried. It moves through stone, through shadow, through open fields, without asking which version of itself was the real one. Winter does not apologize when the first signs of spring appear. The sky does not cling to a cloud because it was beautiful. The tide does not call its retreat a failure. Nothing in nature mistakes movement for loss. Only the human mind looks at change and says, "This should not be happening. This person should remain. This moment should stay. I should still be who I was before." And from that sentence, suffering begins. Not because life has broken its promise, but because we asked life to make a promise it never gave. Peace begins when the argument with reality comes to an end. There was a child who once answered to your name. That child saw the world through different eyes, wanted different things, feared different things. Then came another version, and another. The person you were 10 years ago would not fully recognize the life you are living now. Yet no single version was false, and no single version was complete. You were never a finished object moving unchanged through time. You were an unfolding, a life shaped by memory, relationship, loss, choice, and conditions too numerous to name. There is no need to discover one permanent self hidden beneath all the others. The relief is simpler. No fixed self was ever required. Life has been moving through you the entire time. You do not need to preserve one version in order to have existed. You only need to meet the life that is here now. Imagine cupping water in your hands. Close them tightly, and the water escapes. Open them, and it remains for a while. Not owned, not imprisoned, simply held. This is not a refusal to love. It is a different way of loving, to care deeply without demanding that another person never change. To receive a moment without asking it to repeat itself. To grieve when something ends without believing the ending has erased what was real. Open hands do not mean nothing matters. They mean what matters does not need to become property. Love does not deepen through possession. Presence does not grow through control. And freedom does not come from escaping the movement of life. It comes from no longer needing life to stand still. The book had promised an ending. The monkey erased it. But the deeper freedom was never hidden inside the ink. It was waiting in the moment he no longer needed the page to protect him. The river moved. The sky opened. The name remained only a name. And for the first time, there was nothing left to defeat. Only life. Changing. unheld, and fully here. The monkey set out to defeat death. That was the journey he believed he was taking. He searched for impossible teachers. He crossed oceans. He learned heavenly arts. He entered the underworld. He changed the book of death. Yet none of those victories became the true turning point, because the deepest journey was never from mortality to immortality. It was from resistance to understanding. There came a quiet moment, not recorded in any book, when the question inside him began to change. No longer, how can I live forever? Only, how can I live this life without fighting it? Sometimes, the greatest transformation does not happen when the world changes. It happens when the question changes. The monkey erased his name, but life had never been contained inside a name. Names help us find one another. They are not what we are. Stories help us remember. They are not the life itself. Even memory cannot hold a single moment exactly as it was. Yet somehow, nothing real has been diminished, not because it remained forever, but because it was fully lived when it arrived. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps it always was. One day, someone else will open the doors we once closed, sit beside the windows we once loved, walk the familiar roads without knowing our names. The world will not stop, nor should it, because this life was never waiting to be possessed, only to be shared, only to be experienced, only to be passed from one pair of hands to another. There is a quiet tenderness inside that thought. Not sadness, not triumph, only gratitude. The book closed, the ink dried, the wind crossed the mountain, evening slowly gathered across the sky, and somewhere, without victory, without defeat, without anyone calling his name, the monkey simply continued walking, not away from death, not toward immortality, only more deeply into life. Perhaps that has always been the real journey to the West, not a journey across mountains, but across the distance between fear and freedom. Thank you for walking this path with us. Until next time, may you meet this ordinary day with open hands.
I spent my years writing my name on places that would remember, building small monuments out of days, out of effort, out of becoming. I thought if I climbed high enough, time would hesitate. If I gathered enough mornings, nothing important would leave. But evening kept arriving quietly, without asking. And somewhere inside me, a frightened voice whispered, "Stay, stay, stay." But rivers do not stay, and skies do not stay. And summer never apologizes for becoming autumn. Maybe peace was never promised to the things that remain. Maybe peace arrives when the hand opens and nothing needs to be held. There is an old story about someone who erased his name from the book of death. I used to think that was freedom, to stand outside endings, to become untouchable. But now I wonder, what if he was only tired of losing? What if he wanted what all of us want? One more day, one more version, one more chance to stay. But life kept moving and the wind never asked who I used to be. Because rivers do not stay, and skies do not stay, and even mountains slowly learn to disappear. Maybe love was never asking to become forever. Maybe love was asking to be fully here before evening comes. And one day someone will say my name for the last time. Tea will still become warm, morning will still arrive, and strangely this no longer feels lonely. Only gentle, only true, only life making room for itself. So let the pages close, let the ink become water, let the seasons carry what they carry. I do not need forever, I do not need another name. I only want to arrive while I am here. The book closed, the wind continued, the sky changed color, and somewhere, without anyone noticing, I stopped asking how to live forever, and learned how to be alive.